Denver has 34. Second and goal. Mahomes, flip it underneath. McKinnon turns it upfield, dives, touchdown. Second of the day for Jerick McKinnon.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? This is KCSN Update presented by our good friends at DraftKings. My name is Tucker Franklin. I'm the podcast producer and content manager here at KC Sports Network, and we have a great show lined up for you. One of my favorite guys just to talk football with, Matt Hamilton, is going to hop on and join me to talk about this Texans-Chiefs matchup, get some of the things he's looking for, talk about some of the storylines heading into this Chiefs-Texans matchup. Listen, on paper, it doesn't look very good, but I think there's a lot of things that you can specifically hone in, specifically watch for to see, how the Chiefs have improved or how the Chiefs are improving. We dive into that a whole lot. We talk about the Chiefs Broncos, obviously, and also get his thoughts on what's going on elsewhere in the NFL, as Matt is all over things going on in the NFL with FanDuel TV and the Up and Adams show on air, and a producer for them there at Up and Adams. Good friends over there at Up and Adams. But let's not wait. Let's not delay any further. I got to get you into my conversation with Matt. But first, before I get you into that conversation, I've got to tell you about DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. And listen, they're my go-to when betting on NFL this holiday season. They've got the same game parlays, easy and fast playouts, player prop options, anything you can think of, they've got it. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Check this out. Right now, everyone can earn up to a 100% boost with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same-game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, player props, point totals, and more. The more legs you add, the bigger the boost and the bigger your shot to win big. I love doing the same game parlays, and their boosts make me feel like I've always got a chance of hitting it big. And here's what you got to do. You got to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code KCSN, place a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game, and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See the show notes for details. All right, Matt, thank you for joining me. So stoked to have you back. We had you on talking Jaguars. Now we got another marquee matchup for you with the Houston Texans, Kansas City Chiefs. Fun fact, I don't know if you know this. I saw this, I believe it was on Twitter. I can't remember who I saw this from. I got to be better at screenshotting these tweets so I can remember who they come from. But this will be the first time Patrick Mahomes has played in Texas since college, which seems kind of crazy to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of mind-blowing. He's been in the league for a while now, so that's pretty shocking.
Yeah, the one time they played the Cowboys, it was in Kansas City. I remember it was a big deal. A lot of people from Dallas came up to Kansas City. There's a lot of Cowboys fans in Kansas City. There's a lot of Cowboys fans everywhere, right? But that was a big deal. But I mean, the only other team they could have played, the Texans, they've played in Kansas City. I was at that game when they played them. They obviously played the Texans in the playoffs. But I mean, it tracks. It's kind of crazy to think about, though. The last time he was there was 2015, maybe, or 2017. Yeah, crazy.
It was the 2016 season, right?
Yeah.
He was drafted in 27. That's really crazy. I mean, I guess he didn't start that game. They played that game in 2017 in Dallas.
That's right.
He didn't start. So yeah, so he didn't see any time in that game. That's a wild stat. It's hard to believe.
That's that was the Hail Mary in that Cowboys game. That's what I remember that game for most. It seems like that after that was kind of revolutionized. I feel like more teams started to try that after they did with Tyreek Hill. Obviously, teams don't have Tyreek Hill, and it's a lot easier to do it with that guy. But no, I do remember that game. The Chiefs lost that game, but I will always remember that game for that. But we're not here to talk about games of the past. We're here to talk about games of the future, Matt. But actually, before we fully turn the page on the Broncos game, listen, I've been on record saying a win's a win. Divisional game in December. You're going to take those wins however you can get them. Mike Allen and Jeff DeVito on the one-on-one podcast, we're talking about, I said Mike Allen and Jeff DeVito. I flipped their names. Jeff Allen, Mike DeVito. We're talking about how, listen, just because these teams are bad doesn't mean they're going to roll over for you. Just because you're the Kansas City Chiefs coming into town doesn't mean these teams are going to roll over for you. These teams are going to get up What were your thoughts on the game and kind of the big storylines from it?
I mean, obviously, we saw the Chiefs offense do some incredible things in that game. They put up a lot of points. Mahomes did what Mahomes does. He made some magical plays. Of course, you're a little concerned about the defense when you give up points like that, especially against an offense that struggled as much as the Broncos have. But overall, I think it was the case when you look at how that game played out. The Chiefs built that enormous lead early, and I think just human nature, you lose focus a little bit sometimes. Guys start playing, trying to rack up stats. They get a little bit undisciplined, and I think that's what we saw from this Chiefs defense a little bit. And the Broncos do have talent on that offense. It's not, it's been shocking that they haven't been able to score points because they have so many talented players. So you saw them gain a little confidence and start, making some things work. Jerry Jeudy was fantastic. Yeah, I don't think it's anything that you're going to get super concerned about. But obviously, it's a little bit of a lesson to learn going forward. The Chiefs should know better than anybody else. No lead in this league is safe, and you got to keep your foot on the gas and keep playing. Keep playing the type of football that got you that lead in the first place.
Right, and I think a lot of people like to focus on the Chiefs defense allowing the most points that the Denver Broncos have scored all year. You got to kind of flip it, look at the positive side a little bit. That's the most points that Denver defense has allowed all season as well. And you talked about the mental ability, the mental side of it, the human nature side of things, of getting out to a 27-point lead. Listen, if you would have told me that was going to be the case, I wouldn't have believed you. I don't think. I thought the game was going to be kind of an ugly, like 17-7 type of game, just because it seems like all the games the Broncos are in are ugly like that. So I thought that, with the Chiefs rapport of playing down to kind of the competition, that was going to kind of come through in that. But they came out firing. They came out looking good. The offense looked good. The Chiefs settled for a couple field goals early, but then ended up ultimately scoring touchdowns. So I think there are some positives to take away. As much as Chiefs fans were upset after the game, I think there's plenty of positives to take away from it.
Yeah, definitely. And as bad as the Broncos have been this year, and when you look at the overall record and their inability to finish and win games, they haven't really gotten blown out. I think there's only one game that they lost by double digits all season. So they've hung tough. They've fought. That defense is an elite unit, and when you can put up points like that on them, I think you chalk it up overall. You have to chalk it up as a positive.
I have to bring this up because you talk about how close their games have been, the one possession games. I got sent this tweet from Christian Gumminger. This is from let's see, Kelly Ford, and this is the what if NFL standings. If all of the one possession games were flipped in the other way, right? So for all the other teams, if you take the one possession games, change the result to the other team winning. The Broncos, now this was tweeted out on December 6th, so a couple weeks ago, the Broncos would have been in a playoff spot. They would have been 7-5 in the 7th seed in the AFC. So it's just something to take from this Broncos team. I talked to Benjamin Albright last week about this Broncos team, how it's just everything's just kind of been out of sync on the offensive side of the ball. And then I asked him, I said, well, what's kind of one thing that you put your finger on that, like, what's gone wrong for this Broncos offense? He's like, there isn't just one thing that you can put your finger on, and that's kind of been the problem. If Russell Wilson's been going, the running backs are fumbling the ball. The offensive line coverage hasn't been good. Tim Patrick tears his ACL early in the season. Garrett Bowles goes out for the rest of the season. It's been a catastrophic year in Denver, and he said that he thinks Nathaniel Hackett will be gone after this season.
Wow.
I'm curious to, I was kind of shocked by that as well, just because of what first-year head coach and only giving him 1 year with Russell Wilson. He said that could possibly be almost the death sentence for him, is giving him Russell Wilson, giving him those expectations, no real leeway for him to kind of build up into an offensive. He's obviously a great offensive coordinator in Green Bay. Hasn't really found that stride and just timing and everything in Denver.
Yeah, and it's, when you have those type of expectations, I mean, it is surprising. You don't see it happen often where a head coach is one and done, but it has been so disastrous. And when you make take a swing like that and go get a Russell Wilson, and it's this much of a flop, and especially Hackett's had some questionable decisions. I mean, I get it. It's tough, but I get it. It's been such a disaster there.
It has been. Another team that hasn't had quite a great year either is the Houston Texans. They're sitting in last place of the AFC South. It's known that the Chiefs have struggles against teams from the AFC South. I don't know what it is with this conference. They play really good against teams from the NFC North or NFC West because they've played really good against the Cardinals, the Niners. They got the Seahawks still left on the schedule. They played well against the Rams. But looking at their record of 1-11-1. hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. They've got some injuries as well. But I want to get your just initial thoughts on this Houston Texans team, Matt.
I mean, it's been a brutal year, and this is a team. I mean, we kind of knew coming into the season. There's not a ton of talent on that roster. They're trying to figure out what they have at quarterback. Davis Mills has shown some promising things. You know, last year he was one of the better rookie quarterbacks that we saw in a loaded group of rookie QBs. He jumped out. He hasn't really taken that jump forward this year. There's just a lot of dysfunction across the board there. They've had some bright spots. Running back Dameon Pierce has been fantastic. He's been a breath of fresh air there, but now he's injured. The Brandon Cooks situation and his discontent, wanting to be traded, not being traded. There's just they've been a dysfunctional team, and it's been building to this point for a couple of years. On the positive side for them, as they look forward to build this franchise back up, they have a lot of draft picks. They have that Browns first round pick from the Deshaun Watson trade. They're probably going to have the number 1 overall pick as well. So I think this is an organization with its sights set towards the future, but at the same time, you saw them battle the Dallas Cowboys last week, and it took almost a miracle for the Cowboys to win that game with the position they were put in. They needed the goal line stand and then a 98-yard touchdown drive to beat this team. So the guys out there, they know they're auditioning, whether it's a job with the Texans next year or somewhere else in the league. Those guys all know they're auditioning. And you can't take any team in the NFL lightly, as cliched as it may sound. The Texans showed that last week. No one's going to walk in there and just roll over them if you're not executing.
Yeah. For sure. And they had a really good rookie draft. I think their draft last year was very good. They got some very good players in that draft. Looking at kind of the draft order now, they are slated for that number 1 spot. They're going to have 2 top 15 picks. If everything holds right now, if the season ended right now, Cleveland is a top 15 pick right now. So that's good for the franchise moving forward to have two top 15 picks and everything like that. But I do want to talk about the guys we're going to be seeing on the field. And guys who we couldn't be seeing on the field, because the injury report for the Texans is very interesting. Comes from Aaron Wilson. From what he saw at practice on Thursday, Laramie Tunsil did not practice on Wednesday, but he was back out there. He's dealing with an illness. Flu's going around like crazy. So wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that. Brandon Cooks was back at practice though. But good for the Texans. I think he was out with Nico Collins in that Dallas Cowboys game, which crazy for them to be in that game as close as they were without those two guys. Nico Collins still not practicing, as well as Derek Stingley Jr., offensive guard Justin McCray, cornerback Steven Nelson, Chiefs familiar with him, and running back Dameon Pierce, high ankle sprain. Could be a huge blow if Dameon Pierce doesn't play.
Yeah, and that's the big one, because he's been the driving force for this offense all year. He's been pretty much the only bright spot on this entire team all year. So to lose him is a massive blow, and it really doesn't look like he's going to play. But it was interesting last week against Dallas with Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins out. We saw some guys step up. Wide receiver Chris Moore had a 100-yard game. Amari Rodgers, who you may remember as the third-round pick of the Green Bay Packers, who they cut mid-season, scored his first career touchdown and had a few moments in that game. So they got some things out of these other young receivers. And again, it's guys that are hungry, guys that know they may not have a ton of chances left to prove things in this league. And those type of players are always dangerous.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this matchup. I think it's one of those things where we talk about the Chiefs are going to get the Texans' best shot, right? So I do hope we get to see Derek Stingley play. He was one of my favorites coming out of the draft. He's a good football player, and they do have a lot of good young talent on this team. Excited to see how they develop. And Dameon Pierce, as you mentioned, stud. I mean, I don't know how we didn't see this out of him in Florida. They've been able to find something in him in Houston that they found.
They didn't want to give him the ball at Florida. It was amazing when you look at his touches versus the level of production. It was mind blowing that they didn't want to give that guy the ball, because every time he touched it, something electric happened. And I don't know. I think Florida fans are still scratching their heads over that one.
No wonder they had a new head coach.
Yep.
It makes sense. But let's start to dive into kind of what you're looking forward to in this game. What do you got your eyes on kind of in this matchup?
Yeah, so I think from the Chiefs' perspective, I think this defense has to have a little bit of a chip on its shoulder. They've been questioned after their performances over the last couple of weeks, and I think they have a lot to prove. And you're going up against an offense that's struggling, that hasn't been great all year, that's missing its best player and potentially its best three players. And that's a game you expect to dominate. And, we saw the Cowboys, the Cowboys have some issues against them. Coming off of a big win against the Colts, in which they made a lot of big plays. I don't know, again, I don't know if it was a lack of focus, if they took the Texans lightly, but you want to see the Chiefs come in here and really take advantage of the opportunity to show, hey, this defense isn't a weakness on this team. This defense can shut opponents down. They can make big plays and, kind of quiet down some of the doubt that's been riled up over the last couple of weeks after a couple of rough performances. So that's the biggest takeaway that I'm looking for from this game. How does the Chiefs defense respond to being called into question a little bit over these last few weeks?
Yeah, I agree. The Chiefs' defensive front did a really good job getting after Russell Wilson and really Brett Rippon, too. Whatever quarterback was in the game, they were getting after him, and that's really encouraging to see. I think moving forward, especially against a team where Laramie Tunsil's been playing like the best left tackle in the game. I think PFF has him as their highest rated left tackle, and he's been doing great things this season for the Texans. So I'm going to be kind of looking at that defensive line, that kind of matchup, and they're going to be without offensive guard Justin McCray. Could be without Justin McCray. Could be a big piece in the interior, especially with Chris Jones in there. You're gonna want to put Chris Jones on a guy who's a rookie or a guy who hasn't got many snaps this year. You're gonna find ways to put Chris Jones on that guy.
For sure. And yeah, I think you're right. I'm glad you pointed out the job that the Chiefs front did in that Broncos game was exceptional. I think that's the one part of the defense I think you don't have to worry about. They've got some great players up there. They're very difficult to block. It's the strength of this defense. I think you want to see it out of this young secondary. I think is where you really want to see the improvement over this last month of the season. And this is a great place to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Another thing, I don't know, I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but I kind of want to jump to it now. You talk about the secondary, you're going to talk about the quarterback for the other team. They're going to run a 2-quarterback system. I think that they've been very open of saying like, hey, we're going to run with, I believe it's Jeff Driscoll and Davis Mills here. So what do you think about the system that they're going to implement here?
I loved it last week. It gave the Cowboys some issues because Davis Mills is the pocket passer. He's an accurate guy. Doesn't have maybe the biggest arm, but he's accurate. He's solid in the pocket. And then you bring in Jeff Driscoll, who's kind of the change of pace, run those zone reads with him. He's a mobile guy. He can run around and make some things happen. So it was cool to see, and it worked out pretty well, and gave the Cowboys some issues. I think you got a week of it on tape though now. So, and you kind of know how they're going to use both of those guys. And you saw it as the game progressed, especially on that goal line stand. The Cowboys knew, hey, Driscoll's in the game here. They're going to run some type of zone read, some type of read option. We have to be disciplined and account for the quarterback. And they did it and were able to get that big goal line stop as a result. So the Texans kind of lose that element of surprise now that they might have had over the Cowboys. And I expect the Chiefs to be able to handle that pretty, I don't want to say easily, but I would expect them to handle it.
And as you mentioned too, they're coming off a game where their abilities are being called into question. I don't think that you got to worry about motivation too much with this Chiefs team. These players will find chips wherever they can. I'm excited to see kind of how the Chiefs defense plays against it. Steve Spagnuolo has been scheming up a lot of blitzes. I wonder if the blitzes come into play. But Matt, let's talk about another thing that you got your eyes on. What are you thinking in this game?
So I'm also going to look, can the Texans get any type of run game established at all, especially with Dameon Pierce out? They have Rex Burkhead. They have Dare Ogunbowale, the former Jaguar. There's not a lot, we've seen those guys have some moments in this league. They're solid veterans. There's nothing that really scares you, I think, when you look at that running back group. But that's where we've seen this team have some success this year, is with their ability to run the football. If they're not able to do that, especially with the injuries in the receiving core, it's going to be really hard for them to move the ball.
For sure. And I think that the Chiefs defense, we talked about the front being so good in the pass rush, but they've got some guys up front. Colin Saunders has been playing really well in the run game. Try to say that 5 times fast. And they just signed Brandon Williams, who is a space eater, a dude that can get after. He got a sack in last week's game, but he's also a guy who's traditionally good against the run. Derek Nottie. They've got guys up front that can really stuff the run, especially in the middle. I did see that the Texans do like to run a lot of zone schemes in terms of how they like to scheme things up. I think Brett Coleman talked about that on yesterday's KCSN update. But I'll be interested to see how the Chiefs defense kind of combats that. And you're right, if they can get a running game going, it's going to be interesting for Chiefs fans if they can find some success on the ground. That makes them a little bit more multiple when it comes to, especially with the two quarterback system, what they can do and what areas they can kind of beat the Chiefs in.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think I think it is going to be tough sledding overall. I would expect the Chiefs defense to have a moment to shine here in this one, and um, yeah, we'll see what's able to what they're able to do.
All right, Matt, let's talk about this offense for the Kansas City Chiefs. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about the offense. Kind of crazy that we didn't talk about the offense first in this matchup and Patrick Mahomes. But what are your first thoughts on this offense and kind of what are you looking for them to do in this game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we want to see who's healthy. I know there's a chance that Hardman might be back out there. We'll see what's going on with Kadarius Toney. That hamstring just continues to be an issue, and it has been for almost 2 years now, going back to his time with the Giants. So we'll see that. Obviously, if those guys are back, I can't wait to see what they're able to bring because I think, we've seen what Mahomes has been able to make happen with this offense when it hasn't been at full strength. But I think when you get those two guys back, you want to see kind of what this offense is going to look like going into that playoff run, a full octane version. It's hard, it's scary to think that like we haven't been seeing the full octane version of this offense. But yeah, it'd be great to see those guys back out there and kind of this full unit come together. But yeah, I mean, I think what we've been seeing out of this offense is special. As you mentioned, Derek Stingley Jr. may or may not play. He's been kind of he can be a difference maker out there. I think he's going to be a phenomenal corner in this league. But yeah, it's again, you're playing a team that has the record that the Texans do. You expect to do a lot of big things. You expect to put up a lot of big points, and I think you just hope as an offense you don't press too much. You keep making the reads you're supposed to make. Again, Mahomes has made these phenomenal plays happen out of nothing, but the main reason for his success is he's taking what's there. He's taking what the defense is giving him. And I want to see him continue to do that and not look at this like, oh, we're playing a 1-win team. Let me go try to, throw the ball over the yard and do some crazy stuff. Let's keep running our offense the way that it's been working and fine tune some things here as we go down this stretch run.
Absolutely. And looking at the injury report for the Texans, Lee Collins, Jerry Hughes didn't practice on Wednesday, but they've got a veteran rest day on Wednesday. No big deal. They'll be back. They'll be playing. Those are two big guys. I know Chiefs Kingdom was talking about Jerry Hughes towards the trade deadline. Like, hey, maybe they could trade for that guy. It's a team that hasn't won very many games, maybe looking to offload a contract. Could be a spot in Kansas City for Jerry Hughes. Obviously, the Chiefs didn't make any defensive line moves at the trade deadline. They brought in Kadarius Toney, who Andy Reid just saw this from his press availability, said that everybody practiced. Now we don't know what capacity everybody practiced in, but Andy Reid said that everyone practiced, everyone got work in. Kadarius Toney, I believe, was limited on Wednesday, as well as McCole Hardman. And they kind of need that lateral ability in their offense. We've kind of seen that, especially in the red zone. That's been a big topic on KCSN. We've talked about it a lot. I want to get your thoughts on kind of the lateral kind of jet sweep motions with Kadarius Toney, McCole Hardman, having those guys out and kind of what it would mean to have those guys back.
Yeah, you're right. That's been such a big part of the Chiefs offense, especially this year when we've seen it working. And those guys are both incredibly dangerous with the ball in their hands, whether it's on the jet sweeps, whether it's on bubble screens, things like that. And they also, Hardman's also a guy that can take the top off the defense. So you have both of those elements that have been missing, the vertical and the lateral stretch. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to see this offense really running the way it's designed to run when you don't have that element there. And there's really, with both of those guys out, there's really no one that brings that ability. Juju, seen as a good route runner, tough, makes those catches over the middle of the field, but that element isn't in his game. Valdez-Scantling is a burner, but it's very much straight line, vertical type of speed. So that is an element that has been sorely missed. And I just think if you're the Chiefs, not that you take any game lightly, it's the NFL. But if Hardman and Tony aren't feeling tremendous, right, you've seen you can still put up a ton of points offensively without them. I would give them another week unless they're feeling 100%. Because this is a game, there's no excuses. You have to be able to win this game, whether you have those guys out there or not. So, I think you look at some of the other games on the schedule and you want to get healthy here down the stretch run. You want to get that 1 seed, but you want to get healthy as you hit the postseason and hit your stride at the perfect time.
Right. 4 games left in the season. This is obviously one of them, the Texans. But they got the Seahawks and then 2 divisional games to end out the season with the Broncos and the Raiders. By that time, the Chiefs will probably the Chiefs will beat the Texans this week, right? And they'll have the AFC West locked up. But they're in the hunt for the AFC. And you look at the schedules. You guys have talked about it on the breakdown. We've talked about it on KCS and Update. Everyone's well aware that the Bills have a tougher schedule down the stretch than the Chiefs do. Chiefs have I think the Seahawks is probably their toughest game left, I'd say. If not, maybe the Raiders. That's in Vegas. It's one of those games where it could matter a whole lot to the Raiders more than it matters to the Chiefs. But also it could be a Week 18 game where you've got to play your starters and hope that you can get that first seed in the AFC West or AFC in general. So I'm going to be really curious to see how they handle. We know that Andy Reid likes to ease guys back off of the injured reserve. There's no need to rush McCole Hardman or Kadarius Toney back, especially with soft tissue injuries. McCole Hardman's was an ab injury, which was kind of an odd situation. They actually categorized it as an abdominal illness. So not sure what that could be. Maybe he got what is it, not kidney, pancreas taken out, something like that. Appendix. There you go. Maybe he got one of those things. I don't know. But yeah, it's really interesting to see their schedule coming up, and it's like, okay, you don't have to rush back for this Texans game. Like, this is not a game that you're rushing back for.
And I do think more likely than not that Raiders game in Week 18 probably is still going to matter for the Chiefs, because the only way it wouldn't is if the Chiefs go 3-0 over these next 3 weeks and the Bills drop 2 games. Right. Because remember, the Chiefs don't have that tiebreaker over Buffalo, so they have to beat them outright. Right now, they have the same record. So I think when you really look at how the most likely scenario is that they're going to need that Week 18 game to try to get that bye. And as we saw, the Raiders are not going to be an easy team for them. They played them really tough that first time around. I would expect them to do the same. I know they've been maybe an even more confusing team than the Denver Broncos with how they've played this year. But they're still, they give everybody a tough time.
Yeah, they do. And they've got the Bills have the Dolphins this week. Could be an opportunity for the Chiefs to go up a game. Dolphins have already beat the Bills, but that was in Miami when it was really hot, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly in that game.
It was. And Tua was playing with a lot more confidence then. He's had a rough couple of weeks. So, that's going to be a big test. It's going to be a big test for the Dolphins. And, I would expect the Bills to probably take care of that game with it being in Buffalo.
I think I saw Tua said that it snows in Alabama, is what he said. Probably not like Western New York, I would assume. Probably not like that. But, we'll see how that game shakes out. Matt, before I let you go, I need to get your predictions, your thoughts for this game. For me, I think the expectation for this game I think fans should set a low bar for it, right? It's going to be a game where if the Chiefs come out with a win, that's all the Chiefs need at this point. I don't want to see them go out and do style points. I don't think Andy Reid's going to go out and show a whole lot in the playbook. It's going to be one of those bare bones games. It's going to be one of those games where they just get what they need done. That's going to be what this game's going to be all about. That's kind of my expectations for it. What are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I kind of see it the same way. You also want to get out of it healthy. And I think you want to try to get out, build a big lead early and maybe you can give some guys a rest down the stretch. I'm thinking like a 34-17 type of game. Chiefs kind of get out to a good early start, keep a comfortable distance, and close it out, and hopefully get some more guys in the game, give some of those starters a little bit of a rest, and get out of it healthy. That's all you hope at this point.
The DraftKings line set for this game is at 14 points in this game. I know books elsewhere have it different, but 14 points. You think they cover that?
Yeah, I think they do. I think especially with what the Texans are dealing with from an injury standpoint, I feel pretty comfortable that the Chiefs will cover that, as aggressive as a line as that is.
That is aggressive. Anytime I see a line that's double digits in the NFL, I kind of start to lick my lips, right? Because I'm like, oh, that's free money right there. Because all these NFL games never come down, never 2-score games. It's always a 1-score game in the NFL. But I think that the Chiefs do take care of business. I'm not so sure on that over 49.5 though. They got to have the Texans contribute a little bit for that over to hit, which is kind of a big thing. But Matt, I appreciate you joining me and talking about the Texans. I promise I'll get you on for a good matchup, for a matchup with two good teams eventually at one point.
Tucker, as long as you're involved, I always have a good time. We get to be, we can be talking about the Texans, or we can go into college next. Whatever you want to do, I'll be here. Whatever you want to have me on, I'll be here.
Awesome, thank you, Matt. Well, let people know where they can find you and find your work at.
So you can find me on FanDuel TV. I'm producer and on air for the Up and Adams show, and obviously right here on Kansas City Sports Network. I'm with Matt Castle, our show, The Breakdown. We come out every week. We break down what's happened in the Chiefs' previous matchup. We really dig into the coaching tape, and then look ahead to the upcoming opponents and what's going on throughout the bigger storylines with the team, and kind of break some of that stuff down as well. So I appreciate you having me, and I'm looking forward to sitting down and chatting with you again at some point soon.
Absolutely. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can find Matt Hamilton and Matt Castle's podcast on this same very channel that you're listening to this on. You just scroll down a little bit. I think it's a couple episodes down. You can find their episode. Very good stuff, breaking down the good and the bad from Patrick Mahomes' performance against the Broncos. There were a couple interceptions. They break down one of the interceptions, as well as two of the absolute insane plays that Patrick Mahomes makes in that game. So great episode. You make sure to go check them out. That is going to do it for today's episode of KCS and Update. Thank you so much for joining Matt and I. I will be back next week to talk about the Chiefs game against the Seahawks. It'll be a very good game, very good matchup. I'm excited for it. Geno Smith train is alive and well. It's still running, it's still pumping. He's got to be the comeback player of the year, right, Matt?
I think so. I mean, what he's done this year is it's an incredible story, and I'm excited. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a good one, because that Seahawks offense is rolling.
It is. It'll be a good matchup. Maybe the last good matchup that the Chiefs have on the schedule. But we will see. Divisional games, always, you never know. Everything's up in the air. Just trying to stay healthy this time of year. Trying to stay healthy, get to the playoffs. But tomorrow, BJ Kissel will be with Trevor Sikkema. As you know, on Fridays, Trevor comes on, gives his 3 key matchups for the game. I'll be back next week. So until next time, I'll see you later.